The cold hits before you even open your eyes. It seeps through the ground, through the layers of fur pressed against your skin, through the bodies of the people sleeping beside you. Your breath comes out in clouds. The fire from last night has burned down to a faint orange glow. Outside, the wind is doing something that has no modern equivalent. It is not inconvenient. It is not unpleasant. It is trying to kill you. For roughly 300,000 years, this was not a scene from a survival show. This was winter. And your ancestors didn't just endure it. They had a plan. We tend to think of ancient humans as reactive, as creatures who stumbled through the cold, hoping for the best, dying young, surviving by accident. The archaeological record tells a completely different story. What it shows is a species that read the seasons like a calendar, that stored knowledge across generations the way we store data, that built systems for surviving the coldest months on Earth long before anyone wrote a single word down. So how did they actually do it? The first thing to understand is what kind of cold we are talking about. The last glacial maximum, which peaked around 20,000 years ago, dropped average temperatures in Europe by 8 to 15 degrees Celsius compared to today. Large parts of northern Europe and Asia were buried under ice sheets kilometers thick. The animals your ancestors depended on were migrating. The plants were dying back. The days were shrinking to just a few hours of pale, useless light. And there was no option to move somewhere warmer, order food, or wait it out indoors. Winter was not a problem to be solved later. It was arriving right now. So the first survival move happened before winter even started. Clive Gamble, a paleoanthropologist who has spent decades mapping Ice Age behavior across Europe, documented something remarkable in his synthesis of Paleolithic societies. Ancient humans did not simply react to winter when it came. They anticipated it. They tracked the seasonal patterns of animal herds, the ripening and dying of plant foods, the shortening of days. They used this knowledge to position themselves, physically and socially, before the worst months arrived. This is called seasonal logistical planning, and it is one of the most cognitively demanding things a human being can do. You are not responding to what is in front of you. You are modeling a future that does not exist yet and acting on that model now. Your ancestors were doing this routinely, without writing, without maps, without any tool except a mind shaped by millions of years of selection pressure. The second move was shelter, and not primitive shelter. Sophisticated, engineered, insulated shelter. At a site called Mazyrik in present-day Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered the remains of structures built entirely from mammoth bones. Researcher Olga Sofer, who has studied Upper Paleolithic winter settlements extensively, documented these shelters in detail. The builders arranged mammoth skulls, jawbones, leg bones, and tusks into interlocking frameworks, then stretched hides over the top to create a sealed, wind-proof structure. The bones were heavy enough to anchor the shelter against gale-force winds. The hides were layered to trap air and body heat. Inside, a central hearth kept the temperature survivable even when the air outside dropped well below freezing. These were not accidents. These were architectural decisions. Whoever built them understood the physics of insulation even if they had no word for it. They understood that dead air trapped between layers holds heat. They understood that a low, rounded structure loses less warmth than a tall one. They understood that a sunken floor, dug slightly below ground level, borrows warmth from the earth itself. The same pattern appears at Dolní Věstonice and Pavlov in the Czech Republic, where Jiří Svoboda and colleagues uncovered evidence of winter base camps used repeatedly over thousands of years. Not temporary stops. Base camps. Places people returned to season after season, where they stored resources, gathered in larger social groups, and waited out the worst of the cold together. That word together matters more than almost anything else. John D. Speth, in his detailed analysis of big game hunting in cold climates, identified something that still feels counterintuitive. The single biggest killer of humans in winter conditions was not the cold itself. It was a condition now called protein toxicity, sometimes called rabbit starvation. When you are hungry and the only available food is lean meat, the liver cannot process the excess protein fast enough. You eat. You stay hungry. Your body begins to break down. You can die eating. Your ancestors knew this. not from biochemistry but from hard, generational experience passed down through story, through teaching, through the knowledge systems of the group. They knew that lean meat in winter was a trap. They prioritized fat. Bone marrow, brain tissue, organ fat, the thick subcutaneous fat of a mammoth or a woolly rhinoceros. Boyd Eaton and Melvin Connor, analyzing Paleolithic nutrition, confirmed that ancestral winter diets were extraordinarily high in fat relative to protein, a pattern that appears consistently across cold climate hunter-gatherer groups studied in the modern era as well. But you cannot eat what you have not stored. And storage was its own science. Ancient humans cached food. They buried meat in frozen ground, using the earth itself as a refrigerator. They dried meat and fat over fire to reduce its weight and extend its life. They rendered fat from bones by boiling them in hide pouches filled with water, heated by dropping fire-scorched rocks directly into the liquid. This technique, called stone boiling, could extract calories from bones that were otherwise too hard to crack, and it worked in the absence of any ceramic container. Will Robrooks and Paula Villa, in their landmark 2012 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, pushed the evidence for controlled fire use in Europe back to at least 400,000 years ago. Fire was not a recent innovation by the time the Ice Age peaked. It was ancient, practiced, and deeply integrated into daily survival. In winter, it served at least 5 functions simultaneously: warmth, light, cooking, social cohesion, and predator deterrence. Remove any one of those functions and the calculus of winter survival changes dramatically. Then there was clothing. This is where most people's mental image of ancient humans falls apart. You probably picture animal skins draped loosely over the body. The reality was far more sophisticated. J.M. Adavaggio, Olga Soffer, and Jake Page, in their research on Ice Age textile production, documented evidence of woven plant fibers, knotted cordage, and carefully constructed garments dating back tens of thousands of years. The stitching tools found at Ice Age sites, fine bone needles with eyes, suggest fitted, sewn clothing. Not draped, sewn. Tailored to the body. Designed to minimize the gap between skin and cold air. Layering worked then exactly as it works in modern cold weather gear. A base layer against the skin, wicking moisture away. A middle layer trapping dead air for insulation. An outer layer, usually hide, blocking wind and precipitation. Your ancestors arrived at this system not through engineering manuals but through the oldest teacher available. The consequence of getting it wrong. And winter was also, strangely, a time for something else entirely. The evidence from Dalny Vestinus is striking. The site shows signs of larger than usual social gatherings during winter months. More individuals, more exchange of materials from distant regions, more artistic production. The famous Venus figurines, small carved female forms found across Ice Age Europe, cluster heavily in winter occupation layers. Polly Wiesner, an anthropologist who has spent decades studying the role of firelight in human social behavior, documented something that resonates here. Nighttime fire gatherings shift conversation dramatically towards storytelling, myth, and the sharing of knowledge across generations. Winter, for your ancestors, was not dead time. It was social time. It was the season when the group compressed together, when knowledge was transmitted, when the bonds that would carry the group through the following year were reinforced. The cold forced proximity, and proximity forced connection. There is a reason this matters to you specifically, right now. The instinct to compress, to gather, to tell stories in the dark, to share food and warmth with the people closest to you. These are not sentimental habits. They are adaptive behaviors shaped over hundreds of thousands of years of winter. Every culture on Earth has a winter gathering tradition. Every culture has a midwinter festival built around fire, food, and the people you love. You did not inherit that impulse from a calendar. You inherited it from a species that survived because the group was always stronger than the individual. Your ancestors looked at the most hostile season on Earth and did not flinch. They planned. They built. They stored. They layered. They gathered. They told each other what they knew, so that the people who came after them would know it too. And they did all of this in the dark, in the cold, with nothing but fire, bone, hide, and each other. The cold hits before you even open your eyes. But for 300,000 years, your ancestors already knew exactly what to do next.